Scholars, welcome to Try 3. I'm super excited to have you back. I hope that you enjoyed your couple days off. The teachers did not get any. So we are going to start one of my favorite trimesters. Actually, it is my favorite trimester where we focus on Europe and the Renaissance and then go into the Americas, such as Mexico and Central and South America, which I really enjoy as well. And during this trimester, I get to kind of debunk a lot of misconceptions. I've kind of addressed it all year, but throughout history, it's very much focused on like Europe, or it's called Eurocentric, as Europe has been um, the center of all these inventions and all these things that happened during the scientific revolution and Renaissance were just discovered by the Europeans. And yes, some things were, but as we know from the past in discussing African civilizations and Islamic civilizations, that's not the case. A lot of these things that the Europeans discover had already been around for hundreds of years, and they're just figuring it out. So they're like claiming it, but that's not accurate. But we'll get more into that later. Today we're going to start off with geography so we know where the heck in the world we're talking about. So we'll have an intro, which is now, and a do now, which will only take about 2 to 5 minutes because your do now is actually a speed race. And then notes will take about 10 minutes. That includes a couple keywords and then some mapping. And then guided practice, and then your independent practice for the remainder. And then today is National Mario Day, so if you are a Mario fan, go ahead and get out your Mario Kart or any of those games, Super Smash or whatever, and take some time today to enjoy those games, but not all day because you have work to do. All right, so for your do now, I would like you to set a timer for 1 minute, just 1 minute, and I'd like you to list as many European countries as you can. Just as many as you can. If that's one, that's fine. If that's 10, even better. If that's more, holy crap. But you are not allowed to Google it. You are not allowed to Google. So you are just allowed to list as many European countries as you can, and we'll check in 1 minute. So when I say go, you're going to start your timer. Are you ready? Are you sure you're ready? All right, go. All right, it's a little blurry, but it's still pretty great. So these are all the current European countries. Now, when we're talking and we look at maps for the next couple weeks, it's Europe is not going to look like this because some of these countries don't exist yet. They're more like regions, or they're occupied by certain tribes and kingdoms. They're not individual countries. So there's going to be, there's always going to be major regions, like over here by France, it's going to be the Frankish kingdom, so it's going to be a little much bigger, but that will later become France. We have the Anglo-Saxons, which are going to be primarily up here by the UK, or which is England and um, England and Scotland, and then but the rest of these are all just current European countries. Some of them you can't see the whole thing because of they're just like too long. So like this one is Bosnia. You can't read all that. Czech Republic, Switzerland. What's interesting about Switzerland is during World War I and World War II, this country, even though it was smack dab in between Germany and France and Italy, it never got involved. It never got involved. It stayed neutral. And Switzerland usually, well, not usually, Switzerland always stays neutral in world wars, never gets involved. So you can finish checking those. You can see Greece is down here, which we've talked about. All right, and there's where I'm from. Woohoo! Okay. All right, so we have three keywords today. They're pretty short, but they're kind of, well, the first two are pretty repetitive. Well, they are repetitive, and I'll move my face a little bit right in the middle of the screen so you can see the diagram for topography. So the Middle Ages is the time period between 500 and 1500 CE. In the text, it's going to say AD 500 to 1500. Remember, that is the same exact thing. It's no different. It's just classified differently. Remember, AD has a religious connotation, and CE is religion neutral. So it doesn't associate itself with the Bible and Jesus Christ. So it is the time period between 500 and 1500, and the period which we call between ancient and modern times, which why it's called the Middle Ages. And then medieval, this is the culture of the Middle Ages. This is also the Latin word for Middle Age. Whenever I hear the word medieval, I always think of like knights and kings and that type of thing. So, which is exactly what we'll be talking about. Feudalism will come back. Knights are basically the equivalent of the samurai, but in Europe. So we'll be getting into that. Europe actually takes a lot of ideas from the Japanese as far as how society should be run, and they adopt that feudal system, which we'll talk about more later this week, I believe. And then topography is the physical features of a land's area or surface. So you can see in the diagram, we have the different topography or physical features labeled. So you have mountains, hills, rivers, lakes, valleys, and plains. All right. You can pause and finish that up, and then we'll get to mapping. All right, where can I put my face? There's no good place to put my face. All right, so we are gonna drag and drop, and you have one screen, and each of these are draggable. Oh, snap. I guess I gotta do it like this. Haven't had to do that in a while. So we're going to drag and drop some of these key landmarks, or not landmarks, but landforms that make up the topography of Europe. And Europe is pretty big. It's not as big as Africa or Asia, but there is a lot more to label. So Iberian Peninsula is over here by Spain. Make sure you are dropping with me. So this is the Iberian Peninsula. They like to say that, and we'll read this, that Europe is a peninsula of peninsulas because you see this huge landmass. Well, I don't want to say huge, but you have this bigger landmass and these little peninsulas jutting off of it. I kind of like to say Europe is like your hand. This is the landmass, and then the peninsulas are your fingers jumping out of it. Then we have the Italian Peninsula, which you guessed it, is Italy. Right on that boot. The Balkan Peninsula is going to be over here. And there's going to be the Balkan Mountains there as well. And the Caspian Mountains. The Scandinavian Peninsula is up here. Now this particular, so those are our peninsulas. Now we're going to get into water and mountains and things like that. So the Northern European plain is right here, and I'm going to twist it. You can see me twist it too. And it runs across, right across, obviously, Northern Europe. This is a Northern European plain. This is going to be very, very great for farming and very lush. And we'll see why in a second. We have the Alps mountains. These mountains separate Italy from the rest of Europe. If you've ever seen The Sound of Music, when Julie Andrews is like in the very, very beginning of the movie, she's like running around in the grass and like singing like the hills are alive and all this stuff. The mountains in the background are the Alps. She's not in Italy, she's up here. The Danube is a river that's right here. I know this is getting crowded. And the Rhine. And the only reason I mention these is because they are the major rivers. I know it's really crowded. These are the major rivers, and actually I really like to mention them because this river, the Rhine River, plays a huge part in World War II because Hitler's trying to gain the land east of it. But here we can see that the Northern European plain is going to be great for farming. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Well, it's basically surrounded by two rivers. So those rivers are flowing, and that extra water is going right into that land and making it completely fertile. We have the North Sea, which is up here between England or the United Kingdom and Scandinavia. And then we have the Black Sea, which we haven't talked about. And this separates Europe from the Middle East. And then the Mediterranean's down here and things like that, and the Atlantic Ocean is over here. So go ahead and pause and finish that. You want to make sure you do this because you will have to do this in your independent practice. And if you don't do it now, you're going to be working from scratch. So go ahead and pause. All right, let's do it. So we will go ahead and start reading, and we'll be thinking about these two questions. What two bodies of water are divided by the Scandinavian Peninsula? And what does the image to the left, so this helmet, what does this tell us about life during the Middle Ages? After the Western Roman Empire collapsed, Western Europe began an era of social, political, and economic decline, which means social, political, and money economy went down. But the ruins of the Roman Empire, but from them a new European civilization emerged. Historians call this period between ancient times and modern times roughly from 8500 to 1500 the Middle Ages. Its culture is called medieval civilization from the Latin words meaning Middle Age. Geographers sometimes describe Europe as a peninsula of peninsulas. A quick glance at a map of Europe explains why. Europe is a large peninsula that sticks out from the larger Eurasian landmass. Smaller peninsulas extend from the main European peninsula into the surrounding seas. In the north, the Scandinavian peninsula divides the Atlantic Ocean and the Baltic Sea. In southern Europe, the Iberian, Italian, and Balkan peninsulas push into the Mediterranean Sea. So you can go ahead and pause and answer questions 1 and 2, and then we will check once you're ready. This one, number 2, might take you a little bit longer. Just look at the helmet and think about why would a helmet be representative of the time during the Middle Ages. What does a helmet do? What is the purpose of a helmet? Why would people need a helmet? Okay, go ahead and pause. All right, so it says, number 1, what two bodies of water are divided by the Scandinavian Peninsula? Said Atlantic Ocean and Baltic Sea. And if you aren't sure where that information was found, if you go to the second paragraph just before it ends, it says, in the north, the Scandinavian Peninsula divides the Atlantic Ocean and the Baltic Sea. So the information is right there. Again, so some people have trouble finding this information, but all the answers to these questions are right in the text. You just have to find them. It's kind of like a game. And then what does the image to the left tell us about life during the Middle Ages? This image shows us that people were focused on protecting themselves. A helmet is meant to protect your head, right? Well, you don't need a helmet unless you need to protect yourself. So this shows us that during this time of unrest, we had people that needed to protect themselves. So that helmet was important. Pause and get that if you need to. And then we have one more question together, and then you'll be on your own. Let me move my face again. We'll move it up here so you can see the mountains. These are the Alps, and then these are the Pyrenees that separate Spain from the rest of Europe, which we didn't label, but we don't talk about them that much. Europe's topography, or the physical features of its surface, is varied. Mountains edge much of the continent. To the north, a range of mountains runs along the Scandinavian peninsula. The Alps form an arc of high mountains across southern Europe. To the west, the Pyrenees divide Spain and France, and to the east, the Urals separate Europe and Asia. A lot of people go to the Alps to go skiing in the winter, which I'll never do because 1, I don't ski, and 2, I'm not rich enough to do that. So go ahead and pause your video and answer question 3. What one word would you be able to use to describe the geography or topography of Europe? Go ahead and pause. Make sure you're writing complete sentences. All right, so the word to describe the topography or geography of Europe is varied, and if you were stuck, it's literally in the first sentence right there. Now, digging deeper, I want you on your own, and we're not going to go over the answer to this because I want to see what you have and I want to check on what you know. I need you to answer this question. Why would people use the word varied to describe the topography of Europe? Now, obviously, I didn't give you this big box for no reason, so I do expect academic 7th grade level writing. So some tips for that is that your response should be in complete sentences. Your response should be in your own words. We've had a lot of trouble with that in Try 1 and Try 2. Your answer should be in your own words. If you're copying directly from the text, or if you're Googling and copying completely from the internet, which you shouldn't need to because everything's in the text, that is called plagiarism, and it's actually you get in a lot of trouble for that. It's illegal and you can get fined, and later in school you can get kicked out for it. If you are stuck, just look at the previous slide. Don't waste your time on the internet because it's not worth it. When you're done with that, you can move on to your independent work. So you have some questions and then you're going to map again. And then you are done for the day. Tomorrow, we're going to start talking about the earliest kingdoms of Europe and Charlemagne. Not Charlemagne the God from the radio station, but Charlemagne was actually a king. So we'll be talking about him as well. And we'll also talk about Charles Martel, also known as Charles the Hammer. All right, so think about that. Why would someone call their leader Charles the Hammer? All right, so you have a wonderful day. Do well. Make sure you meet these expectations for your turn-in checklist and fill out your attendance form if you have not done so already. And I will see all of you tomorrow. We'll learn about some kings. See you later.